Imagine standing on a crumbling stone wall. Beneath you, the earth shakes, not from an earthquake, but from the marching boots of 80,000 soldiers. In front of you is the Ottoman Empire, the most powerful military machine on the planet. They have conquered everything in their path: Constantinople, Belgrade, Buda, and now they are looking up at you. Behind you, just 2,000 people. Not elite commandos, not a legion of knights, but a ragtag mix of mercenaries, exhausted peasants, and women and children. The year is 1552. The place is the castle of Eger in Hungary. By every military calculation, this battle should have lasted 3 days. The math was simple: 40 attackers for every 1 defender. It was a suicide mission, a massacre waiting to happen. But history has a funny way of defying the math, because what happened over the next 39 days wasn't just a battle. It was a miracle. It was the moment a tiny fortress broke the teeth of a superpower and saved Europe from total collapse. How did they do it? How did a handful of civilians hold back the tide of history? The answer lies in a brilliant commander, a secret inventor, and the unexpected fury of the Women of Eger. To understand the sheer insanity of this defense, we have to look at the map of 1552. Suleiman the Magnificent was at the height of his power. The Ottoman Empire was expanding like a wildfire. They had already swallowed the central part of the Kingdom of Hungary. Their goal was clear: Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire. But to get to Vienna comfortably, they needed to secure the supply lines. They needed to crush the remaining resistance in northern Hungary. And sitting right there, like a bone in their throat, was Eger. Eger wasn't a masterpiece of engineering. It was old. The walls were neglected. Supplies were low. The man in charge was Captain István Dobó. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a realist. He knew the army coming for him was led by Kara Ahmed Pasha, a man who didn't know the meaning of the word failure. Dobó wrote letters to the king, begging for reinforcements. He wrote to the nobility. He begged for powder, for men, for food. The response? Silence, or vague promises. By late summer, Dobó realized the truth. No one was coming. The king had written Eger off. They were a speed bump intended to slow the Ottomans down for a few days before being crushed. So Dobó made a choice. If they were going to die, they would make the enemy pay a price so high that history would never forget it. He gathered his 2,000 defenders. Most were professional soldiers, yes, but many were local refugees. He looked them in the eye and demanded an oath. It wasn't just a promise to fight, it was a pact of death. Dobó swore that he would never surrender the castle, and he warned his men, if anyone speaks of surrender, they die. This wasn't tyranny. This was necessary. Because when you see an ocean of 80,000 Turks setting up camp, surrounding you on all sides, the temptation to wave a white flag is overwhelming. On September 9th, the siege began. But not with an assault. It started with a roar. The Ottomans dragged nearly 150 cannons into position. Among them were the massive siege guns, capable of smashing stone into dust. For days, it rained iron. The walls of Eger, already old, began to crack. Towers crumbled. The noise was deafening, a psychological torture designed to break the defenders' spirits before the first soldier even climbed a ladder. But inside the walls, something strange was happening. Instead of panic, there was a cold, hard resolve. Dobó had organized everyone, and I mean everyone. While the men manned the cannons and muskets, the women of Eger didn't hide in the cellars. They became the logistics engine of the defense. They cooked, yes, but they also carried ammunition. They nursed the wounded. And as the days dragged on and the men grew tired, the women began to step closer and closer to the front lines. The Ottomans launched their first major infantry assault. Waves of janissaries, the elite shock troops of the Sultan, rushed the breaches. Imagine the scene: smoke choking the air, the screams of thousands of men, ladders slamming against the walls. The Hungarians fought with a desperation that shocked the Turks. They didn't just fire muskets, they poured boiling oil. They threw rocks. When they ran out of ammo, they used their bare hands. They repelled the first wave, then the second. Kara Ahmed Pasha, the Ottoman commander, was annoyed. This was supposed to be easy. He ordered the bombardment to intensify. "Level the place," he commanded. "Leave no stone standing." But István Dobó had an ace up his sleeve. Or rather, a mad genius. His name was Gergely Bornemissza. Bornemissza wasn't just a lieutenant. He was an inventor. He knew they couldn't win a fair fight, so he decided to fight unfair. He turned the castle into a house of horrors for the attackers. One of his most terrifying inventions was something the Turks called the fire wheel. Imagine a huge wooden wheel, like from a cart. Now pack it with gunpowder, soaked oil rags, and loaded muskets facing outward. When the Ottoman infantry packed tight into the narrow breaches, trying to force their way in, Bornemissza would light the fuse and roll this flaming nightmare down the hill. It would crash into the enemy lines, exploding, shooting bullets in every direction and setting men on fire. It caused absolute chaos. The superstitious soldiers began to whisper that the Hungarians were using black magic, that they were in league with the devil. But Bornemissza didn't stop there. He created primitive grenades, clay pots filled with gunpowder and shrapnel. He created water bombs filled with boiling oil. Every time the Ottomans thought they had found a weakness, Bornemissza had a trap waiting for them. Before we witness the turning point of the battle, quick question. Have you ever heard of Gergely Bornemissza before today? History is full of unsung heroes like him. If you want to discover more incredible stories of courage and strategy that textbooks often leave out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring the past to life every single week. Now, back to the walls of Eger, where the situation is about to get desperate. But gadgets can only do so much when you are starving and exhausted. By October, the siege had dragged on for weeks. The defenders were dead on their feet. Food was running out. The walls were practically piles of rubble. The Ottomans knew it.
they prepared for the final, decisive blow.
It was late September when the crisis point arrived. A massive section of the wall collapsed under the heavy bombardment. This was it. The breach was wide open. Thousands of Ottoman soldiers surged forward, sensing victory. The Hungarian defenders, battered and bleeding, tried to hold the line, but they were being pushed back by the sheer numbers. Panic began to set in. If the Turks entered the inner courtyard, it was over. Every man, woman, and child would be slaughtered or enslaved. And this is where the legend of the Women of Eger was born. Seeing their husbands, brothers, and sons faltering, the women of Eger made a choice. They didn't run to the chapel to pray. They ran to the walls. But they didn't go empty-handed. Historical accounts tell us they grabbed whatever weapons they could find. Swords from fallen soldiers, pikes, axes. But their most famous weapon was soup.
Wait, let me explain. In the heat of the battle, great cauldrons of boiling water, hot soup, and melting pitch were kept near the walls. The women dragged these heavy cauldrons to the edge of the ramparts and tipped them over onto the climbing attackers. Scalding liquid is a horrific weapon against men wearing armor. You can't take the armor off fast enough. But it wasn't just the boiling soup, it was the sight of them. Imagine being an elite Janissary warrior. You've conquered empires, and suddenly you are being beaten back by a mother holding a sword in one hand and a rock in the other, screaming in fury. It broke the Ottoman morale. It was humiliating. It was terrifying. One famous story tells of a woman whose husband was killed right next to her. Instead of collapsing in grief, she picked up her sword and killed the soldier who struck him down, fighting over her husband's body until the wave retreated. That day, the line held. The Ottomans fell back, confused and demoralized. They weren't fighting an army anymore. They were fighting an entire population that refused to die.
By mid-October, the weather turned. This was Hungary. The autumn rains began to fall. The ground turned to mud. The nights started to freeze. For the attackers living in tents, this was a nightmare. Sickness began to spread through the Ottoman camp. Cholera, dysentery. Morale plummeted. The soldiers were asking, "Why are we dying for this pile of rocks?" Kara Ahmed Pasha was furious. He had 80,000 men. How could he not take this castle? He ordered one last desperate all-out assault. Everything they had. But the defenders of Eger knew this was the end game. Dobó, injured and exhausted, walked the walls. He didn't give a grand speech about glory anymore. He just pointed to the enemy and said, "They are tired too. Hold one more time," and they did. The final assault was a bloodbath, but the Hungarians stood like statues of iron. Bornemissa's explosives detonated. The women poured the last of the boiling pitch. The men fired the last of their gunpowder. The Ottomans, broken by the mud, the cold, and the ferocious resistance, finally stopped. They simply stopped attacking. The soldiers refused to climb the ladders. The commanders shouted, whipped them, threatened them, but the mighty Ottoman army had had enough. On October 17th, 1552, something unbelievable happened. The people peering over the shattered walls of Eger saw movement. But the enemy wasn't charging. They were packing up. Tents were struck. Cannons were hitched to horses. The vast ocean of soldiers turned their backs and began the long, shameful march home. The silence that followed must have been the loudest sound István Dobó ever heard. They had done it. 2,000 people against 80,000. They had survived 39 days of hell. They had endured heavy artillery, starvation, and wave after wave of the world's best infantry. The Siege of Eger became a legend instantly. It rang through the courts of Europe. In Vienna, in Rome, in Paris, they celebrated. The myth of Ottoman invincibility was cracked. It proved that the Ottoman war machine could be stopped, not by a bigger army, but by sheer, unbreakable human will.
Today, if you visit the city of Eger in Hungary, you can still walk those walls. You can visit the grave of István Dobó. The inscription on his tomb reads, "The wall was the strength of the soul, not the stone." It's a reminder to us all. History is often written by the victors, and usually the victors are the ones with the biggest armies. But sometimes, just sometimes, history is written by the ones who simply refuse to yield. The Siege of Eger wasn't just a military victory. It was the ultimate underdog story. It showed the world that numbers don't always count, that strategy, innovation, and a united spirit can overcome impossible odds. Those 2,000 defenders are long gone, but their echo remains. They remind us that even when you are surrounded, even when the walls are crumbling, and even when the whole world expects you to fall, you can still stand. What do you think was the decisive factor in this battle? Was it Dobó's leadership, Bornemis's inventions, or the courage of the women? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see another impossible victory where a small force defied an empire, click on the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next chapter of history.